The little boy said 7 words. My mother says you're a bad man. Listen, K-Fam. The man froze. Then he looked at the child's face, the lowered left eyebrow, the thumb tapping twice before speaking, his own habits staring back at him. Eleanor Nell Whitaker is a live-in mansion housekeeper. 28. Black, beautiful, a bib apron tied at her back, brass keys clipped at her waist. For years she polished the heirlooms of a house that was never hers, raising her 5-year-old son Micah in the staff cottage out back. She had one rule: stay out of the private wing. Then the owner came home. Han Jae-kyung, 30. They call him the Golden Serpent. A serpent tattoo crawls up the left side of his neck and vanishes under his collar. Platinum watch, gold ring shaped like a snake, the kind of man whose shadow fills a doorway. IU. She once loved this man. She thought he threw her away. Micah slipped into the old study, looking for glue to fix a toy ship. Jae-kyung found him instead, and started counting the years on his fingers. Nell walked in carrying a silver tray. She stopped cold in the doorway. Because alone, in that room, 2 people finally showed each other the messages that ended everything. His words, her words, except neither of them ever wrote them. Somebody built the lie that tore them apart, and now they want a name. But what they uncover next goes deeper than any of them are ready for. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. The cloth moved fast across the silver, and Nell did not slow down for the ache building in her wrist. Circle, breath, circle. The candelabra in her hands was older than the house that held it. 3 arms of tarnished silver that caught the morning like they wanted to fight it. She worked the polish into the grooves. She worked it out again. Behind her, a whole wall of the east wing waited its turn. Porcelain, brass, a clock that had stopped in another century, and nobody let her fix. She had 40 pieces to finish before noon. She counted them the way other people counted prayers. Every one of them had a story she wasn't allowed to touch. The teapot with the dent nobody would let her buff out, because the dent was the point. Some grandfather had thrown it at some wall in some year that mattered. The brass bell that had called dead men to dinner. She dusted history for a living. She kept other people's memories shining and went home to a cottage that smelled like her son's hair and had nothing in it older than her. Circle. Breath. Circle. The polish stung a crack in her thumbnail, and she ignored it. A sound came from the doorway. Small feet, careful. She knew those feet. Micah, she kept polishing. What did I say about the wing? You said, stay out. The boy stood at the threshold, one shoe on the marble, one still on the runner. He was testing the line. He always tested the line. But I'm not in. I'm at the door. The door is the wing. She set the candelabra down without a clink. That was a skill. 8 years in this house had taught her hands to be quiet. Come here then, since you're already breaking my heart at 9 in the morning. He ran to her. 5 years old and built like a question mark. All curls and elbows. The little wooden ship clutched against his chest, the way some kids held a blanket. The sail hung loose off its mast, a strip of ivory cloth she'd cut from an old apron and glued down herself, twice, and it kept coming free. It fell again, he said, holding it up like evidence in a trial. I see that. You said you'd fix it. I said I'd fix it tonight. She crouched to his level. His eyes did the thing they did, the left brow dropping just a hair, weighing her, deciding if she was lying. It was a look that belonged to someone else. She had spent 5 years pretending she didn't recognize it. Tonight, baby, I got glue in the cottage. Real glue, not the flour paste you tried. That was one time. That was Tuesday. He almost smiled. He fought it. He won, mostly, and that was the other thing he did that wasn't hers. She tucked the ship into the deep pocket of her apron, safe, and stood. Her knees popped. 28 years old, and her knees already talked back. The uniform pulled tight at her waist. Matte black dress, white square collar going soft at the edges from too many washes. The apron bow she tied fresh every dawn, because a crooked bow got noticed in a house like this, and getting noticed got you a note, and a note got you gone. Micah, I need you to hear me. She turned him toward her by the shoulder. The far end of this wing, the old rooms with the closed doors. You don't go past the clock, not the study, not the library, not any door I haven't opened for you. You understand? Why? Not a whine. A real question, flat, thumb tapping twice against the side of the ship before it went in her pocket. Tap, tap. She'd stopped flinching at that years ago, mostly. Because they're not ours to be in. Nothing here is ours. The words landed cleaner than a 5-year-old should be able to throw them. She held his stare. She did not blink first. The cottage is ours, she said. The garden's ours until they tell us it isn't. And I'm yours. That's the list. Now go find Mrs. Cole. She's got your breakfast, and she does not like waiting. He went. He looked back once at the closed doors down the hall, the long dark stretch past the stopped clock, and then he ran off toward the kitchens with his sneakers squeaking on marble that cost more than a year of her wages. Nell breathed out. She picked the candelabra back up. She got through 6 more pieces before Miriam Cole found her. The older woman came the way she always came, silent until she wanted to be heard, keys hushed against her hip. Miriam had run this house's staff for 30 years. Black and white high collar buttoned to the throat, gray-black hair pulled into a bun so tight it looked like discipline. She'd hired Nell herself, 8 years back, a pregnant girl with no references and a suitcase, and Miriam had looked at her a long time and said only, "We start at 5. Now she stood in the archway with a folded paper in her hand and her mouth set wrong. Eleanor. Nobody called her that. Miriam called her that when it was bad. Say it, Nell said. She didn't turn around. Turning around made it real faster than she was ready for. Put the silver down first. I don't put things down when people tell me to put things down. It's a whole flaw of mine. But she set the candelabra on its felt anyway, because Miriam's voice had a floor under it that hadn't been there at breakfast. Miriam came closer. She put the paper on the sideboard, on the felt runner, careful of the wood even now, even with news like this. She smoothed it flat with 2 fingers. Nell read it upside down first, because that was faster, and her stomach was already dropping before her eyes got the words right side up. Notice of intended sale. The estate, the grounds, the staff structures thereupon. Structures thereupon, Nell read out loud. Her voice came flat. That's the cottage. That's my cottage. That's every cottage. Miriam's hand stayed on the paper. That's my rooms too. That's Sung and the gardener, and the girl from the village who does the linens. All of it. They're selling the whole thing out from under us. When? The notice says 30 days for the household to be informed. Miriam's jaw worked. We are the household. We've been informed. 30 days. Nell did the math the way she did everything, fast and cold, because feeling it later was cheaper than feeling it now. 30 days, and Micah's school was a mile from here. 30 days, and every dollar she had was in a coffee tin under the cottage floorboard. And it was not 30 days and start-over money. It was barely a bad week money. 30 days, and the cottage wasn't just walls. It was the notch in the door frame where she'd marked Micah's height every birthday, 5 little pencil lines climbing the wood. It was the window he watched for her from when she worked late in the main house. A small face and a raised hand behind the glass. You couldn't fold that into a suitcase. She'd tried, once, in another country. Some things you left in the wood. Sit down before you fall down, Miriam said. I'm not the fainting kind. I've seen your kind faint. Who's buying? She said. Miriam didn't answer. Nell looked up. That was the tell. Miriam always answered. Who's buying? Miriam. It's not a sale to an outsider. The words came slow, like each one cost her. The notice is procedural. Ownership's transferring. Coming home is the phrase they used. Her mouth twisted on. Home. The family's boy, the one who's been overseas. He's taking the estate. The candelabra was still in Nell's hand. She felt her grip go wrong around it, the polish making it slick, and she set it down before it could fall. Quiet. Even now, 8 years of quiet hands. What boy? She said, and she already knew. She knew from the roof of her mouth going dry. She knew from the way her heart had started doing something ugly against her ribs. Han Jae-kyung. Miriam watched her while she said it. Watched too close. The son. He's coming back to run things himself. Word came this morning. He'll be here inside the month. The name did what names like that do. It went in like a blade slid between 2 ribs. No blood at first, just the cold. Nell kept her face still. She had gotten good at that too. She turned back to the sideboard and picked up the cloth and found a spoon that didn't need polishing, and polished it anyway, because her hands needed a job or they'd shake. Okay, she said. Okay? Miriam's brows went up. Girl, did you hear? I heard you. Circle, breath, circle. 30 days. New owner. I heard every word. She felt Miriam's eyes crawl over the side of her face, over Micah's ship-shaped bulge in her apron pocket, over the way her free hand had come up to touch the little gold locket at her throat, without her deciding to do it. Eleanor? Softer now. Dangerous, that softness. The boy who's coming. Was he here before, when the old man was alive? You've been here 8 years. I clean silver, Nell said. I don't keep track of the family's travel. It wasn't a lie. It was a door, and she shut it, and she leaned her whole weight against it. Miriam let it sit. That was the thing about Miriam. She knew when a door was shut, and she knew shut doors in this house had reasons. She picked the notice back up, folded it along its old creases, and tucked it away. I'll tell the others tonight, she said, after the boy's asleep. No sense him hearing his home's got a clock running on it. He'd tell me it was never ours anyway. Nell's mouth bent, not a smile. He said that this morning. Nothing here is ours. Kid's not wrong. Kid's 5. He's allowed to be wrong. Miriam almost laughed. She didn't. She touched Nell's shoulder on the way out. Once. The way she'd touched it 8 years ago when a scared pregnant girl asked if the pay came weekly. Then she was gone, keys whispering, and Nell was alone with 40 pieces of somebody else's silver and 30 days. She thought about the others while she stood there. Sung, who'd worked the grounds 40 years and had a bad hip and nowhere softer to land. The linen girl from the village, 16, sending half her pay to a sick mother. The gardener who talked to the roses like they answered. A whole quiet economy of people the notice had reduced to. Structures thereupon. And every one of them would look at Nell the way staff looked at whoever stood closest to the family, waiting to be told it would be fine. She couldn't tell them it would be fine. She could barely tell herself. She made it to the end of the sideboard before her hands stopped working. She set both palms flat on the wood. She looked at the closed doors down the hall, past the stopped clock, the study she'd told her son to stay out of. She'd cleaned every room behind those doors 100 times. She knew which floorboards sang in the library. She knew the study smelled like old paper and a cologne nobody wore anymore. She knew that at the far end, in a silver frame she dusted but never turned toward the light, there was a photograph of a young man with a serpent inked up the left side of his neck, laughing at something outside the picture, and she knew exactly what he'd been laughing at, because she'd been the one holding the camera. She had told herself he was a story that ended. You tell yourself that enough times, it holds. Most days it held. Now it was walking back through the front gate in less than a month. She pressed the heel of her hand against the locket. Inside it, she didn't open it, she never opened it in the house, was a photo the size of a thumbnail. Micah, 3 days old, eyes swollen shut, a full head of black curls. Nobody had ever asked her whose the boy was. In a house where the help kept their heads down and their business quiet, a housekeeper with a baby was just a housekeeper with a baby. She'd built her whole life on that not being a question anyone bothered to ask. Han Jae-kyung had never met his son. Han Jae-kyung had told her, 5 years ago, in a message that still lived word for word behind her teeth, that if there was a child, it would not carry his name. She had read that message on the worst night of her life, and she had packed a bag and disappeared into a country he'd forgotten she existed in, and she had raised the boy alone, and she had made her peace the only way you can make peace with a wound, by never touching it. She'd built rules around the wound instead. Don't look at the silver frame. Don't answer questions about the boy's father. Don't let anyone see you flinch when Micah drops his brow that exact way, taps his thumb that exact way, tilts his head like he's listening for a door in another room. Keep your bow straight. Keep your hands quiet. Keep the country she ran from on the far side of an ocean where it belonged. 8 years of rules, stacked like the 40 pieces of silver, and every one of them was about to get walked past on the way in from the front gate. 30 days. Nell, a small voice. Micah, back in the doorway, one shoe over the line again, testing, always testing, toast crumbs on his lip. Mrs. Cole says you look funny. Mrs. Cole needs to mind her business. Nell wiped her hands on her apron and made her face come back together, piece by piece, until it was a face a child could trust. I look funny how? Like when the water heater broke. That's a very bad look. Yeah. He came in 3 steps, then stopped, remembering. He looked down at his own foot over the line and, deliberately, dramatically, stepped it back out. He wanted her to see him obey. He was so proud of it that it cracked something in her chest. I stayed out. You stayed out? She crossed to him and crouched and pushed a curl off his forehead. You're the best boy in this whole house, you know that? You're the only girl in this house who'd say it. Mrs. Cole's a girl. Mrs. Cole is a warden. He said it carefully, a word he'd clearly been saving, and she laughed for real, the sound surprising both of them, too loud in the hush of the East Wing. Where'd you get warden? Book? He shrugged, like books just handed you weapons and it wasn't his fault. The one with the pirate. The warden keeps everybody in, and the pirate gets out through the window. And which one are you in this house? He thought about it seriously. He thought about everything seriously. It was exhausting, and it was the best thing about him. Pirate, he decided, but a nice one. I only steal glue. You steal glue. One time. Tuesday, he said, delighted, throwing her own word back at her, and she had to press her lips together not to laugh again, because laughing twice in one morning in the East Wing would get her a note. Then his eyes went past her, down the hall, to the closed doors and the dark beyond the stopped clock, and his brow dropped that fraction, and his thumb found the side of the apron where his ship was hidden, and tapped it twice through the cloth. Tap, tap. Nell. Whose rooms are those, really? She should have said the family's. She'd said it 100 times. It was the safe answer, the flat answer, the door. But the notice was folded in Miriam's apron, and the man in the silver frame was coming home, and something in her was too raw to lie smooth. They belong to a man who's been away a long time, she heard herself say. He's coming back soon. This is his house. All of it. So you stay out of his rooms, Micah. I mean it more now than I meant it this morning. Is he nice? The question hit somewhere she wasn't braced for. I don't know, she said, and it was the truest thing she'd said all day. I used to think I knew. I don't anymore. Micah studied her the way only he could, the way that made her feel seen, clean down to the floorboard where the coffee tin lived. Then he decided something, the way he decided things. Fast, final, tapping his thumb once against the ship. If he's not nice, he said, we'll leave. You and me. We're good at leaving. She had never told him they'd left anywhere. She had never told him about the country before this one. The bag packed in the dark, the plane. But he knew. Kids know the shape of the thing even when you keep the thing behind glass. Yeah, baby. She pulled him in and held him and looked over his shoulder at the closed doors, at 30 days, at the whole quiet life she'd built on a lie coming apart 1 week at a time. We're good at leaving. But even as she said it, she knew leaving was the one door that had just closed. You couldn't outrun a man who owned the ground you were standing on. You couldn't disappear into a country when the man arriving was arriving. Here. To the exact square of earth where you'd hidden his son for 5 years. There was nowhere left that was far enough. There was only through. She hadn't decided anything yet. She wanted that on the record with herself. She was still just a housekeeper with a cloth and 40 pieces of silver and a boy who stole glue. But her thumb had found the locket again without permission, and her eyes had found the closed doors again, and somewhere under the fear, a smaller, sharper thing had woken up and started counting days too. Down the hall, the stopped clock said the same wrong hour it had always said. The east wing waited, full of silver she'd have to hand over to a man who didn't know what he'd left behind. She held her son a beat longer than he had patience for, and when he squirmed, she let him go, and she watched him run back toward the kitchens with a warden and a piece of toast waiting for him. Then she picked the cloth back up. 40 pieces before noon. She'd polish every last one. She'd tie her bow straight and keep her hands quiet and her head down, the way she had for 8 years. She'd get through today. But her eyes kept going to the closed doors, and her hand kept going to the locket, and under her palm, small and warm, sat the wooden ship with a sail that would not stay glued, no matter how many times she fixed it. The sail came loose again on the 3rd stair. Micah stopped where the carpet ran out, one shoe on marble, and looked at the ivory scrap hanging off the little mast by a thread of dried glue. He pinched it back into place. It slid down again. He blew air through his lips, the way his mother did when the silver would not shine, and he kept climbing. Nobody had told him this was the wing. Nobody had to. The clock told him. It stood tall at the top of the stairs, with its hands stopped at 4:10, and past that clock the hallway went quiet in a way the rest of the house never did. His mother had drawn a line there with her voice 100 times. Not past the clock, baby. Not ever. But she had also promised glue. Tonight, at the cottage, with the real kind. And tonight was very far, and the ship needed to sail before school. And somewhere behind these doors, there was a whole house full of grown-up things that fixed other things. He tapped his thumb against the mast, twice. Then he pushed the 2nd door. It opened without a sound. The room smelled of paper and cold ash. Books climbed the walls to the ceiling. A big desk sat in the middle like a sleeping animal, and along its edge stood little frames, and cups holding pens, and a low drawer left half open. Micah went straight for the drawer the way small hands always go for the open thing. Inside, paper clips, a dead lighter, a spool of red string, and a tube. He turned the tube to the window light, a picture of a broken cup on the label, two halves floating toward each other. Glue. He climbed into the big chair to work. It swallowed him. His feet swung. He set the ship on the leather top, unscrewed the little cap with his teeth, and squeezed. Too much. A shining bead crawled down the deck and onto his thumb, and he wiped it on his navy trousers. And now the sail stuck to his finger instead of the mast, and he was so deep in the war with it that he did not hear the third door. He did not hear anything until the light in the doorway changed. He looked up. A man filled the frame, tall in a way that made the tall clock look small, shoulders that took the whole doorway, a dark teal shirt open at the throat. On the left side of his neck, something moved when he moved, a serpent's tail slipping up under his collar, ink that had been drawn to look alive. He had a face like the men on the covers of his mother's magazines at the salon, except none of those men were looking at Micah like this. The man did not speak. He looked at the boy, and at the ship, and at the glue on the desk that was his father's desk, and the muscle in his jaw shifted once. Micah put the sail behind his back. Then he decided that was babyish, and brought it forward again, and held the ship against his chest. "This isn't yours," the man said finally. His English had corners in it, sanded smooth but still there. "This room." "I know." Micah's chin came up. "I needed glue." Something crossed the man's face. Not a smile. The ghost of the place a smile lives. He stepped inside. The door swung half shut behind him, and the room got smaller. He did not come close. He crouched near the shelves, forearm across his knee, so that his eyes and the boy's eyes were closer to level, and Micah understood, in the wordless animal way children understand, that the crouch was meant to make him less afraid, and that it was working, and he did not entirely want it to. "Whose glue?" the man asked. "Nobody's. It was in the drawer." "You went in my drawer." The drawer was open. Micah tapped his thumb against the little hull. Twice. Fast. The man's eyes dropped to the thumb, stayed there a beat too long. "What's your name?" "Micah." The man repeated it under his breath, testing the shape of it, the way you say a word, in a language you are only starting to learn. "Micah." He looked at the ship. "You made this?" "My mama helped. The sails from an apron. It won't stay." He held it out as evidence, the ivory scrap flopping. "I fixed it and fixed it. Grown-up glue is stronger. That's why." "Give it here." Micah hesitated. Then some scale tipped, and he handed the whole ship across the space between them, and the man took it in one hand that could have crushed it, and did not. He turned it. He found the loose sail. He pressed it flat with a thumb and held it, patient, the way you hold a thing that has broken more than once and has learned not to trust being held. "You have to wait," the man said. "That's the part everyone skips. You put the glue, and then you do nothing. You count." "Count to what?" 60. Slow. His eyes flicked up. "You know 60? Micah gave him a look that could have peeled paint. "I'm 5, not a baby." That ghost again, at the corner of the mouth. "Count then." But the boy did not count yet. He was studying the man's hands instead, the way those hands held the small ship without pressing it, and he found the marks on the left one, thin, dark lines that ran up over the knuckles and disappeared into the cuff, brothers to the thing on the neck. "You have snakes on you," Micah announced. "One snake. On your neck, too. Same one." The man tipped the ship a fraction so the light caught the deck. "It goes all the way around." Micah considered this with total seriousness, the way children consider the truly important facts. Does it hurt? No. Did it hurt when they put it? The man's thumb held the sail flat. "A little. You wait through that too." The boy nodded, satisfied, filing the man away under the heading of people who knew useful things. He set his eyes back on the sail and drew a breath to start his counting. and the mast tapped twice under his thumb before the first number came. 1, Micah said. 2. He counted on, slow and grave. The man held the sail, and in the space of that counting, standing guard over a wooden boat in a room he had not entered in 8 years, Han Jae-kyung looked at the child's face, the way a man reads a letter he already suspects is bad news. The brows. Straight, low, drawing together in the middle when the boy concentrated. His own brows, the ones in every photo his mother had framed of him at that age. The stare that did not slide off a stranger the way a normal child's would. And the thumb against the hull, 2 taps before every answer, the exact tell his uncle had mocked out of him at 14, and never quite killed. He had watched himself do it in a mirror once, decades ago, and hated it, and here it was again, smaller, alive, tapping on a toy. 5960, Micah finished. Now? Jae-kyung let go of the sail. It held. Micah's whole face opened. He took the ship back and shook it, gently, then harder, and the sail stayed against the mast like it had always meant to, and he made a sound that was pure and loud and had nothing careful in it. He looked up at the man with something dangerously close to worship. Jae-kyung did not smile back. He was doing arithmetic behind his eyes. 5 years, add 9 months, then count backward across the water, across the silence, to the last night he had touched a woman in this house, before everything with her went to ash, in the space of 2 text messages. The numbers landed. They landed like a hand closing around his throat, and his face gave away none of it, only a slow blink and the smallest tightening at the corner of his jaw where the serpent's tail met his collar. "Who taught you to count so slow?" he asked. His voice had changed, a degree cooler, a degree more careful. "Mama." "And what does your mama do here?" "She fixes everything." Micah said it like a fact of the world, like gravity. The silver, the sheets, the whole house is hers, really. She just doesn't own it. He frowned at the last part, having heard it somewhere, not liking the taste. "Somebody bad is buying it. We have 30 days. Jae-kyung went very still. "Somebody bad," he repeated. "Mama says the man who's coming is a bad man." Micah said it kindly, almost apologetically, the way you tell someone their shoe is untied. "She says, stay away from him." She said it lots. He turned the ship over, checking the sail again, loyal to the miracle of it. "But she doesn't own the house, so we can't leave, and we can't stay, and I don't get it." The man crouched 3 feet away, said nothing. "You went quiet too," Micah observed. He said it without accusation, a small scientist noting a result. "Grown-ups do that. Mama goes quiet about the man. Miriam goes quiet about the letter. You go quiet about the snake." He turned the ship in his hands. "I don't like quiet. It means something's coming." The corner of the man's mouth moved and did not become anything. "What comes?" Jae-kyung asked. "When your mama goes quiet." "We pack." The boy said it simply. "We're good at leaving. We did it before, when I was little. Different country. I don't remember it, but she tells it like a story." He looked up. "Is that what's coming? Are we leaving because of you?" The child had just told him, in the flat, honest voice of the very young, that he was the villain of his own house, and had also handed him, without knowing, without meaning to, the shape of an 8-year hole. Jae-kyung looked at the boy's mouth, at the small beauty mark he did not have, at the eyes he absolutely did. He thought of a name he had not let himself say out loud in a country and a half. "This bad man," he said slowly. "Did your mama say his name?" Micah shook his head. "She doesn't say his name, she goes quiet." He tapped the thumb, twice. "Are you him?" The room held its breath. Down the hall, past the stopped clock, a door opened. Nell came up the private stairs with a silver tray balanced on her forearm, and murder in her walk, because Miriam had said the boy was not in the kitchen and not in the yard and not answering, and there was only one place a 5-year-old with a broken boat would think to look for glue, and it was the one place on earth she needed him never to be. She turned the corner past the clock, with an apology already loading behind her teeth for whatever staff she was about to find him bothering. The study door stood open. She saw the back of a man crouched by the shelves. Broad, dark teal, black hair with volume at the crown, strands fallen over the forehead she could have drawn blind. She saw her son's face over the man's shoulder, lit up, unafraid, holding a boat that finally kept its sail. The tray did not fall. Her hand knew before her mind did, and clamped down on the rim, and one small cream jug slid an inch and stopped against her thumb, and that was the only sound, a single soft chime of silver on silver, but it was enough. The man turned his head. 8 years came down the hallway and stood in the doorway wearing a maid's black dress and a white apron, and a face she had spent those years teaching not to move. And it did not move now. Not the mouth, not the eyes, only the pulse jumping once in her throat above the collar, only the knuckles going pale on the tray. Jae-kyung rose, slowly, unfolding to his full height between her and her child, so that for one terrible second she could not see Micah at all, and every instinct in her body leaned toward the boy the way a plant leans at a window. Nobody spoke. Micah, delighted, oblivious, held the ship up over the man's arm so his mother could see. "Mama, it works. You have to count to 60 and do nothing. Look how it stays." Nell's eyes did not leave the man's. "Micah," her voice came out level. It cost her everything she had. "Come here." The boy started forward. Jae-kyung's hand lifted, not to stop the child, just an involuntary half-inch, the reflex of a man who has just found something and hears it being taken away, and then he mastered it and let it fall, and Micah crossed the room and pressed himself into his mother's skirt, with the ship held high like a trophy. She put her free hand on his head, covered as much of him as one hand could cover. "I told you," she said down to him, "not past the clock." I needed glue, no fear in it. He had gotten what he came for. The man helped. The man? She looked up from her son's curls to the man, and across 10 feet of a dead woman's library, the two of them said nothing at all, and the nothing was so full it hummed. Jae-kyung's gaze dropped to the boy's hand, where the thumb had started, small and certain, tapping the hull, twice. He looked at it the way a man looks at proof. Then he looked back at Nell, and the question was already in his face, the whole terrible arithmetic laid out behind his eyes, and she saw him see it, and she saw the exact moment he stopped guessing. "He's 5, Jae-kyung said. Quiet, not a question. A number he was checking against another number. "Micah, honey." Nell's hand tightened on the tray. "Go find Miriam. Tell her I said Coco. Go on." The boy looked between the two grown-ups, sensing at last the thing under the room the way animals sense weather, not understanding it, only that it was large. He did not want to leave the man who had fixed his boat. He wanted to show him things. He tapped his thumb one more time. "Are you coming back?" he asked the man. Jae-kyung looked at him. Something in the sculpted face cracked a hair's width and sealed over. "Yes," he said. Nell's stomach dropped through the floor. "Micah, now." She turned him by the shoulder toward the hall, toward the clock, toward the safe, loud parts of the house, and he went, dragging his feet, the wooden ship sailing over his shoulder with its sail holding fast, past the tall clock stopped at 4:10, until his footsteps got small and then were gone. And then it was only the two of them and 8 years, and a library full of a dead woman's books. Nell set the tray down on the nearest surface, with a control that was its own kind of violence. She straightened. She folded her hands in front of her white apron the way she folded them for people she served, and she looked at the man she had raised a child to hate. "You're early," she said. "The letter said 30 days. It's been 11. I moved the date up." He said it like a man confessing to something. "I don't know why. I told the pilot to fly, and I didn't ask myself the question. You're here." His voice had gone rough at the edges. He took one step, and she took none, and he stopped. His eyes went to the door where the boy had left, came back to her. Eleanor. Nobody had used her whole name in 8 years. It landed somewhere under the locket. "His name is Micah," she said. "He goes to a school a mile from here. He likes boats. He does not know you." She let the last word sit. "And that is the way it stays until I say otherwise." He came off the shelves properly now, into the middle of the room, and the movement had the wrongness of a big animal moving carefully in a small space. He stopped at the desk where the glue tube still lay open. He looked down at it, at the 2 frames along the edge. His hand went out and turned one of them a quarter turn toward himself. A silver frame, the photograph inside it, a younger version of the man in front of her, laughing, the serpent fresh on his neck, an image she had made herself, with a borrowed camera on a roof one summer, that no longer had a right to exist. "You kept the room the same," he said. "I keep every room the same. It's my job." Her chin was steady. "I dust that picture on Tuesdays." Something went across his jaw. He set the frame back at its exact angle, and she watched him note that she had matched the dust line to the base, that nothing in his dead mother's study had drifted an inch in 8 years, because a woman he had been taught to forget had been keeping it breathing. "They told me you left," he said. "That you took money and you left." "They." Nell's mouth curved without warmth. "Who is they?" He did not answer. His eyes had gone back to the door where the boy's footsteps had faded. The serpent's tail moved on his neck as he swallowed. He looked at her the way you look at a thing you were told burned down and find standing. "Whose is he?" he asked. And the question was so soft and so stripped and so far from the man in the photographs that Nell felt the floor of the whole careful house she had built tilt 1 degree toward the sea. She did not answer. She reached up, without deciding to, and closed her hand over the small gold locket at her throat, the one with the 3-day-old face inside it, and she held it the way the man had held the sail, pressing the broken thing flat, waiting, counting, trusting nothing about being held. He saw the hand go to the locket. He knew that locket. He had watched it catch the light on a roof, on a woman who laughed easier then, and he had a sudden and unbearable certainty about what was folded inside it now, and he did not ask to see. Asking would make it real in the room, and the room was not safe for real things yet. "Whatever they told you," I said, he tried, and his voice broke on the low end of the word. "About a child, about a name. Don't." 1 syllable, flat as a slammed drawer. "Not here, not with him down that hall." His mouth closed. Down the hall, the boy laughed at something, bright and far away. And in the study neither of them had entered in 8 years. The golden serpent stood among his mother's books and looked at the woman he had been made to lose, and began, silently, to count the years he had not been counted into. Nell moved first. She crossed to the study door and pushed it until the latch caught, and the click sealed the 2 of them inside the room neither had entered in 8 years. She kept her back to him a breath longer than she needed to. When she turned, her face had gone flat as a swept floor. "Down that hall my son is drinking cocoa," she said. "So we do this fast, and we do it low." Jae-kyung stayed where he was, between the desk and the shelves of his mother's books. "Fast," he repeated. "Fine. You said a name, a child. Finish it." His jaw worked once. Then he took his phone from inside the waistcoat, thumb moving without looking, the way a man opens a wound he has kept mapped for years. He held the screen out across the space between them, arms straight, not stepping closer. You sent me this. The last night, after you left. Nell did not take it. She read it from where she stood. If there is ever a child, I won't let it carry your name. Don't look for me. There's someone else, and he's already more than you were. The words hit her low, under the ribs, in the exact place she had built 8 years of walls around, because she had never written them. Not one letter, not one comma. That's not mine, she said. It came from your number. It's not mine. Her voice didn't rise. It dropped. I never sent you that. I never sent you anything the last night. You want to know what I did the last night? I sat on the floor of a bathroom that wasn't mine and waited for you to call. Something moved behind his eyes, fast, then locked down. She reached into the pocket of her apron, under the wooden ship, and drew out her own phone. Her hands were steady. That was the thing that scared her. How steady they were. She thumbed to a screenshot she had kept across 3 phones and 1 ocean, and turned it to face him. Now you, she said, read what I got. He came off the shelves. 2 steps. He looked. Tell her if there's a child, it won't carry my name. She was staff. She was convenient. I'm done pretending otherwise. The color left the top of his face first. She watched it go. I didn't write that, he said. Funny. That's my line. Eleanor. It came from your number. She threw his own words back without heat, the way you set a plate down hard enough to be heard but not to break. Signed. J.K. You always signed things. It was the one soft thing you did. Jae-kyung took the phone from her hand. She let him. He held both devices now, one in each palm, and he stood there in the middle of his dead mother's library, looking from her screen to his own, like a man doing arithmetic that keeps coming out wrong. Same night, he said. Same night. Mine came at 11:40. She didn't have to check. She knew the time the way she knew Micah's birth weight. Mine came at 11:52. He set both phones on the desk, side by side, screens up, and for a moment, he just looked at them, lying there, like 2 halves of something that had been cut with one blade. 12 minutes, he said. 12 minutes. She heard her own breath go ragged, and she reeled it back in. Somebody stood in the middle of us and wrote both. Somebody who could reach both phones. Somebody who wanted us to walk. And we walked. I ran. She let the correction land. You were free to stay where you were. And I had something growing that couldn't wait for me to be brave. His hand flattened on the desk. The gold serpent ring caught the light, and she looked away from it because she remembered too well what that hand had been to her once, and this was not the hour for remembering. Where, he said, low, not a question so much as a demand aimed at the floorboards. Where did you go? Far, then farther, then here, under a name that isn't the one you knew, cleaning a house I could recite in the dark, raising a boy who taps his thumb twice before he lies to me. She stopped. She had not meant to say that last part. It sat in the room now, undeniable, a thing they had both watched the boy do not 20 minutes ago. Jae-kyung's eyes came up to hers and held. He does that, he said, because I do that. I know what he does. I've watched it grow on his face for 5 years. Her chin lifted. That doesn't make it a conversation you get to have. Not yet. Not on a screenshot and a bad hour. You think I doubt it. I think it doesn't matter what you're sure of. She stepped to the desk and took her phone back, and the movement put her close enough to smell the cold air still clinging to his shirt from wherever the plane had set him down. She did not step back. I have been sure of things about you for 8 years. I was sure you sent me that message. I built a whole life on being sure. So forgive me if your certainty isn't the currency in this room. That reached him. His shoulders dropped a fraction, the fight going somewhere deeper, somewhere it would burn longer. Then, tell me what is, he said. Proof. The word sat clean in the air. He waited. A test, she said. Blood. His and yours. Not your family's doctor. Not a man on your payroll. Not a lab whose name I've heard in this house. I choose the clinic. I sit in the room. The sample doesn't leave my sight from his arm to the courier's bag, and the results come to me first. To you first. To me first, and I decide the hour you hear them, if you hear them. She held his eyes. Those are the terms. There's no negotiating the terms. There's only whether you agree to them or whether you send for your lawyers. And we do this the slow, ugly way. In which case, I promise you the boy is grown before you get a number back. For a long moment, he said nothing, and she watched him understand that she had thought about this, that somewhere in 8 years of scrubbing another family's silver, she had drawn up the exact conditions under which she would ever let him near the truth. It was in her face. She let it be in her face. I agree, he said. All of it. She had braced for the fight. The lack of it unbalanced her more than a fight would have. She covered it by moving, pocketing the phone, squaring the wooden ship in her apron, buying herself the second it took to get her footing back. There's a second thing, she said. Name it. Somebody built this. She gestured at the space where the 2 phones had lain. 2 messages, 2 numbers, 12 minutes apart. On the one night they'd do the most damage. That's not a jealous ex, or a jealous cousin firing off a text. That's somebody who wanted the timing surgical. Somebody with reach into both our phones and a reason to want us split before. She stopped, recalculated in the open, out loud, because she had spent 5 years too careful to think out loud, and now the thought was moving too fast to hold. Before there was a child that could carry your name, Jae-kyung went very still. Say that again, he said. Whoever did this didn't just want us apart. They wanted the name dead. No heir. That message wasn't cruelty for cruelty's sake. It was a fence. Somebody was building a fence around your line, and I was standing in the pasture. She heard herself, and pressed on before the size of it could stop her. The question isn't who hated me. Nobody in your world knew me enough to hate me. The question is, who profits from you having no son? She watched the answer arrive in him. She watched him not say it. His thumb, she saw it now. The same tell the boy had, blood telling on blood, tapped the edge of the desk twice, and then he closed his hand over it, as though he could pin the habit down. You have someone, she said. I have a shape. His voice had gone quiet in a new way, the quiet of a man moving furniture in a dark room he knows too well. A shape I've spent a lot of years not looking at directly. Then we look at it directly. We, she said, and the word cost her, and she paid it anyway. I'm not doing this from the outside, waiting for you to hand me a story. I've cleaned every room in this house. I know which drawers stick, and which ones were oiled last month, and by whom. I know the day the study lock was changed, and I know it wasn't the locksmith who signs the ledger. If somebody in this family built a fence 8 years ago, they left the nails in wood I dust every week. You want the man. I want him more. So we look together, or I look alone and you read about it after. He almost smiled. It didn't reach anything, but it was there. A ghost of the thing she used to be able to pull out of him with less than this. You were always the most dangerous person in any room you cleaned, he said. Don't, she said it flat. Don't do that. Don't reach back. There's a hall with a 5-year-old in it, and a fence somebody built around him before he was born. That's the whole of what we are right now. two people who got the same lie on the same night, and a boy standing between us who doesn't know your face is his face. The smile went out. Good, she thought. Let it stay out. She could not afford, this morning, for him to be the man she had loved. She needed him to be exactly what the room made him, a fact, a resource, a signature on her terms. How do we start? He said. You don't touch it. She said it before he could reach for it himself. That's the first rule of looking. You are the last man in this house who should be asking questions, because the moment you ask, whoever built this knows you're back and knows you're close to the boy, and things that took 8 years to arrange get burned in an afternoon. You go be the returning son. You take your meetings. You let them think you came home for the ledgers and the land. You let them watch you not care about the maid and her kid. And you. I dust. Her mouth curved without warmth. I dust and I listen, and I open drawers that are mine to open, and I bring you what I find in a house I know better than any person alive, including you, especially you. He absorbed it. She could see the executive in him testing the plan for holes and finding none, and she could see the other thing under it, the thing she refused to name in this room, the thing that had made him move a flight up 11 days early for a reason he'd claimed not to understand. There's a book, he said suddenly. She waited. My mother kept a book, recipes. She couldn't cook to save her life. It sat in the kitchen my whole childhood, and I never once saw her open it to cook from. He looked toward the shelves, at a gap she had not registered as a gap until his eyes marked it. She used to write in it, numbers mostly. I thought they were oven temperatures. I was a boy. I thought everything a woman wrote down was a recipe. Where is it now? That's what I'm asking you. He turned back. You know this house. Where would a careful woman keep a book she pretended not to use? And there it was, the first crack of the thing, splitting open into something larger than the two of them, larger than a night 8 years dead. A book. Numbers that weren't temperatures. A woman who couldn't cook, keeping a cookbook her whole life. Nell's mind went, unbidden, to the kitchen pantry, to a high shelf she cleaned twice a year, to a spine she had wiped 100 times without ever once wondering why the pages inside were soft, with handling, in a house where no one baked. She didn't tell him. Not yet. She held it the way she held everything. Close, and hers, until she decided the hour. I'll find it, she said. A sound came from down the hall then. Not words. A small clatter. A cup meeting a saucer wrong. The ordinary noise of a 5-year-old and a spoon. Both of them turned toward it at once. The same turn, the same tilt of the head, and Nell saw Jae-kyung register that they had moved as a pair, and she saw him decide not to say so. He'll come looking, she said. He always does. He'll come up that hall to show you the ship again, and you will not be here when he does. You're throwing me out of my own study. I'm keeping a boy from building a father out of one morning and a snake tattoo. She crossed to the door and put her hand on the latch and did not open it yet. You want to be in his life, you earn it the long way, on my clock, after a number comes back and a fence comes down, not before. You get sure with your blood, and I'll get sure with mine, and neither of us gets to be soft about it until the man who did this is standing where we can see his hands. Jae-kyung crossed the room. He stopped an arm's length from her, close enough that she had to tip her chin to hold his eyes, and she held them, because the day she looked away from this man was the day she lost the house. The clinic, he said. When? Thursday. I have his school half-day. I'll take him for ice cream, and I'll take him for the test, and he'll think the whole afternoon was ice cream. Her throat tightened on that, and she let none of it show. You'll get a message with a time and a place, and nothing else. You'll come alone. You'll wear something that isn't yours. Her eyes flicked, once, to the fitted teal at his shoulders, the ring, the watch. You look like money, and money gets remembered. Come looking like a man who fixes boilers. Boilers? Boilers. She turned the latch. And Han. It was the first time she'd used any name for him at all, and it stopped him. When the number comes back, she said, not looking at him now, looking at the seam of the door, and it says what we both already know it says. You don't get to cry, and you don't get to kneel, and you don't get to buy him anything. He has a mother who has spent 5 years making him whole on nothing. You will not walk into that and start unmaking it with money and grief. If you're his, you come in slow. You come in on my terms. You come in like a man learning to be gentle for the first time, because that is exactly what you'll be. Behind her, his breath went out long and controlled. And if I can't, he said, if I'm not that man, then the fence stays up, she said, and I keep him, and you keep your house, and we both live like the message was true. She opened the door 6 inches, no more, and the sound of the boy came louder, a hummed tune, tuneless, happy, oblivious. Your choice, same as it was 8 years ago, except this time, I know somebody wrote the lie, and this time, I'm not running. She stepped through and pulled the door nearly shut behind her, leaving him inside his mother's library with 2 phones worth of proof that the worst thing he'd believed about the last 8 years had been handed to him by someone else's hand. Down the hall, Micah looked up from the tray Miriam had set him at, cocoa on his lip, the wooden ship standing upright beside the cup like a thing that had sailed somewhere and come back. Did you see the man? He asked. He fixed my boat. He counted to 60. He's coming back, he said so. Nell crouched and wiped the cocoa from his lip with her thumb and did not let her hand shake. I saw him, she said. Is he the bad man? She looked at her son, at the low, straight brows, at the fixed stare that was not hers and had never been hers, at the thumb that even now was tapping twice against the base of the cup as he waited for her answer, and for the first time in 5 years, she found she could not tell him the lie she had told him his whole life, because she no longer knew if it was one. I don't know yet, baby, she said, but I'm going to find out, and until I do, the rule holds, not past the clock, not without me, yes? Micah studied her the way he studied everything, too long, too still, the way his father had studied her in a sealed room. Yes, he said, then tapping the mast. But he was nice, Mama. He didn't yell. Bad men yell. Nell gathered him up, cocoa and ship and all, and carried him toward the kitchen stairs and the ordinary noise of a house that had no idea what had just been decided in its oldest room. Behind and above them, the study door clicked fully shut, and somewhere between here and Thursday there was a clinic, and a book of numbers that weren't temperatures, and a man in the family who had built a fence around an unborn child and had lived 8 years believing it would hold. Miriam watched them go from the kitchen doorway, a ring of keys in her fist, her round face unreadable, and Nell, arms full of her son, missed the older woman's eyes dropping to the gold locket at her throat, missed them staying there a beat too long, missed Miriam's mouth pressing into a line that was not quite worry and not quite guilt, but stood, for now, in the country between the two. Nell only knew this. The lie had a maker, and she had just made an ally of the one man who could pay to find him, on her own terms, 12 minutes and 8 years too late to save the girl she'd been, but in time to fight for the boy she'd raised. Thursday, she thought, climbing the stairs with Micah's chin on her shoulder. Blood on Thursday. A book to find before then. She started, without meaning to count the days. The clinic smelled like nothing, and Nell hated it for that. She sat in the plastic chair with her knees together and her hands flat on her thighs, watching the technician tear the swab wrapper on the counter. Micah kicked his heels against the chair leg, the wooden ship in his lap, the sail holding. He'd been promised ice cream after. He believed her. Across the small room, in a gray coat that made his shoulders look like a man who fixed boilers, Jae-kyung kept his eyes on the boy and not on her. "Open," the technician told Micah. "Like a lion." Micah roared. He opened his mouth. The cotton went along the inside of his cheek, 10 seconds, and Nell counted every one of them with her eyes on the swab and not on the door. "Okay, big man," she said. "Your turn's done." Then the technician crossed to Jae-kyung. Same wrapper, same 10 seconds. Nell watched the cotton go in and come out, and go into the second tube, and she did not blink until the cap clicked shut. She had said the sample never left her sight. It didn't. She followed the technician's hands to the sealed bag, to the label, to the box, and she wrote the clinic's own code down on the back of her palm in ballpoint, so there could be no swap later. The technician turned the tube in the light, checked the label twice, and slid it into a plastic sleeve. Nell tracked the sleeve the way a cat tracks a bird. Counter to bag, bag to box, box to the little rack by the sealed door. She had told this man exactly where the sample was allowed to go, and he had agreed, and men agreed to a lot of things they forgot the moment a woman looked away. So she did not look away. "Mama, is the lion done?" Micah said. "The lion's done, baby." "Can I do the roar again?" "One more, quiet one." He did a quiet one, cheeks puffed, and the technician almost smiled, and across the room, the man in the gray coat watched his son roar, and something moved under his face that he shut down before it finished. 3 business days, the technician said. "You'll get the call." "She'll get the call," Jae-kyung said. Not to the room, to Nell. She stood. She took Micah's hand. "Ice cream," she told the boy, and did not look back at the man in the gray coat, and felt his eyes on the back of her neck the whole way to the door, like a hand that never touched her. 3 days. She spent them in the house. Nobody watches a woman with a dust cloth. That was the whole architecture of her life, and she had built it on purpose, and now she used it. Friday she cleaned the pantry, top to bottom, shelf by shelf, the way she did twice a year, so no one would wonder why she was up the rolling ladder, with her arm buried behind the flour tins. The soft-handled cookbook was where memory had put it. High shelf, back row, in a kitchen where no one baked, its spine padded in worn green cloth, so it wouldn't announce itself as a thing that mattered. She brought it down. She did not open it in the pantry. She wrapped it in a linen towel like a loaf and carried it to the cottage under her arm, and she waited until Micah was asleep with the ship on the pillow beside him before she cut the string. Recipes. Real ones, in Sun Hee's careful slanted hand, braised short ribs, a honey cake, and in the margins, everywhere, numbers. Jae-kyung had thought oven temperatures, 350, 405, 190. She had cooked from real books her whole working life, and no oven on earth ran at 405, no cake baked at 190, and then, 2 lines down, at 1988. Dates. Her thumb stopped moving on the page. She'd cooked from 100 books like this in 100 kitchens. She knew what a real recipe looked like when a woman meant it. The splashes, the crossed-out amounts, the 2 salt last time. In the corner. This book had all of that, and then, threaded through it, the numbers that belonged to no stove. A woman who wanted her handwriting to survive a search had hidden the true thing inside the boring thing, because the boring thing was the one no one in that family would ever pick up. Not oven temperatures. Dates, disguised as them, dropped into the one book a mafia man would never open because it belonged to the kitchen, and the kitchen belonged to women. Nell pulled a pencil from the jar. She started to translate, low over the lamp, Micah breathing behind her. 405. Wasn't 405 degrees. It was the 5th of April, 350, the recipe that made no sense, no cake, no meat, a note beside it in Korean she couldn't read, and a name she could, underlined twice, in Roman letters, careful, a foreign woman spelling out a foreign word so she'd never lose it. Evelyn Price. Nell sat very still. A phone number ran under the name, its area code the same as the city an hour east, and a line of English at last, the only full English sentence in the whole green book, written small like a secret told to a page. For the boy, when there is one, so he does not have to ask any of them for anything. She read it 3 times. She pressed her hand flat on the page as if it might get up and leave. A woman who could not say her fear out loud in her own house had said it here, in English, to a page, in a book about cake. So he does not have to ask any of them for anything. Them, not him, them, a whole family reduced to a word a frightened woman spat into a margin. Nell knew the weight of them. Without being told. She had spent 8 years being nobodies. Them. And she recognized the shape of a woman planning an escape route for a child who did not yet exist. Then she copied the number onto the inside of her own wrist, below the ballpoint clinic code that hadn't washed off, and she blew the lamp out. She did not sleep. Saturday, the call came. She took it standing in the pantry with the door shut and her back against the shelf. A stranger's voice reading a number, a probability, the long word. Paternity. And then the longer number after it, 99.99, and more nines than the woman bothered to say. Nell said thank you. She said it twice. She hung up and she stood there with the phone against her collarbone and her eyes shut, and something moved through her chest that was not joy and was not grief and had no name she wanted to give it. She had known. She'd known for 5 years. A number on a phone should not have been able to do anything to a thing she already knew. It did anyway. She let herself have 30 seconds. She counted them. Then she opened the door and went and found the boy and made him toast and cut it in triangles because he liked triangles, and she told him nothing because a lab result is not a family, and she had learned the difference the hard way once already. Zaekyung was in the study when she brought the tray up. She'd said she would decide when he heard it. She decided now. She set the tray down, cream jug, 1 cup, and she stood on her side of the desk with the whole width of it between them. He looked up when the tray touched wood. He'd been at the window with his back to the door, watching the drive the way a man watches a thing he can't stop coming, and he turned, and he read her face before she opened her mouth, because it turned out he could still do that after 8 years and a forged goodbye. "You're his," she said. He went still in the way she remembered, the stillness that wasn't calm, the stillness of a man holding something so it wouldn't spill. His jaw worked once. He looked at the cup and not at her. "Say it again," he said. "The lab called an hour ago. It's you." It was always you. She kept her voice flat, because flat was the only shape that would hold. "You don't tell him. You don't buy him anything. You don't kneel down and open your arms. That's not how this goes." "How does it go?" "Slow." She put 1 finger on the desk. "He met a nice man who fixed his boat. That's all he gets to have for now. You earn the rest or you don't get it." His hand came up and pressed flat over his own mouth, the gold serpent ring catching the lamp, and he held it there a moment, and then he took it away and he was steady again. "All right," he said, slow. "There's more." She turned the linen-wrapped book over on the desk and folded the cloth back. "Your mother wrote you a book you couldn't read." He looked at the green cloth and his face changed. He knew the book. He'd held it as a boy and thought nothing. He reached for it and stopped, hand hovering, as if it might be hot. The numbers aren't temperatures, she said. They're dates, and one of them isn't a date. It's a name. She turned to the page. She put her finger under the 2 underlined words. Evelyn Price, Jae-kyung read. He said it wrong. The stress on the wrong part. A man reading a stranger. A lawyer. Family law, going by the numbers exchange. Nell's finger slid down to the small English line. She did not read it aloud. She let him. She watched his eyes move along it. But for the boy, when there is one, so he does not have to ask any of them for anything. And she watched his shoulders drop a half-inch, like something had been set down on them from a great height. She knew, he said, rough. Before I did, before there was one, she was already. He stopped. His thumb tapped the desk twice before he finished, the exact tell his son had, and Nell looked away from it. She built something, for a grandson she never got to meet. So there's a something. Nell straightened. A fund? An account? A trust? Set up by your mother, aimed at a child, run through a woman named Evelyn Price, which means it exists somewhere with your family name near it, and somebody has been standing on it for 5 years. His head came up. You said you had a shape, she went on. A suspect you've been not looking at. A man who profits from you having no son. She let it sit. A trust for an heir is exactly the kind of thing a man like that would need to bury. Not because of the money, because of what it proves. Proves what? That your mother expected a grandchild, that somebody knew there'd be one. Her mouth went thin, which means somebody knew about me before you ever got that message, before either of us did. The room was quiet. Down the hall, faint, Micah's voice, singing the counting song the tattooed man had taught him. 58, 59, 60. And then a small triumphant crow. Jae-kyung didn't move at the sound, but something crossed his face and stayed. I'll call her, he said. Price, today. No. Nell put her hand flat on the book. I call her. She's my mother's. She's a woman your mother trusted to keep a secret from. Your family. Nell held his eyes. You are your family. The neck says so. She sees that ring walk through her door. She says nothing worth hearing. She takes a call from a housekeeper who can read a dead woman's kitchen. She might listen. She closed the book. You stay the returning son. Bored, rich, uninterested in the maid. That was the deal. His jaw flexed. Then he nodded, once, and she saw what it cost him, the not doing, the sitting still, while a stranger walked toward his mother's last gift. She called from the cottage that night, wrist to the lamp, the number still there under the clinic code. A woman answered on the 4th ring. Careful voice, the kind that had been careful for a living for 20 years. Evelyn Price. You don't know me, Nell said, but I found your name in a green cookbook, written next to the words, For the boy when there is one. Silence on the line, a long one, long enough that Nell heard a chair take a woman's weight somewhere an hour east. Say the rest of that sentence, Evelyn said, quiet, testing. So he does not have to ask any of them for anything. Another silence. When Evelyn spoke again, her voice had dropped the caution and picked up something heavier. There's a boy. There's a boy. Nell's hand closed on the edge of the table. He's 5. His name is Micah. And I have a lab result from this morning that says who his father is. She heard the lawyer exhale, long and slow, the sound of a thing held 5 years, and finally let go a little. I set up that instrument in the spring, before son he died, Evelyn said. An independence trust. Funded quietly, out of her own separate money, structured so the beneficiary, a grandchild, when one existed, would never have to sit across a table from the golden serpent and ask for a dime. She was terrified of that. of a child born into that name and owned by it. A pause. She named a protector to release it. Herself while she lived, and a successor after. Who's the successor? That's the problem. The careful voice came back, tight now. The instrument's valid, the money's real. It sat there gathering interest for 5 years. Nobody's touched it, because nobody could prove there was a beneficiary. But the clause that names who controls it after Sun He, the release authority, the whole spine of the thing, lives on one page of her will, the execution page. Signatures, the successor's name, the trigger, and that page isn't in the filed copy. Nell heard papers move. I have my draft. I have every version but the last. The signed original went into the family's hands for safekeeping after she passed, the way these things do, and when I finally got a certified copy from the estate 2 years ago, that page was a dry sound, not a laugh. A page. Renumbered, clean, like it was never there. The trust points at a controller nobody can read, so the trust can't move, so the money sits, so no heir ever gets it. Nell shut her eyes. Somebody pulled the page, she said. Somebody who had the original in their hands, and a reason to want no heir ever funded. Evelyn's voice went flat and sure. I've known that for 2 years. What I've never had is the one thing that makes it worth reopening. A beneficiary. A beneficiary. A beat. You just gave me one over the phone from a cookbook. Nell opened her eyes. Across the room, Micah slept with the ship on the pillow. The sail she'd promised to fix long fixed. And she thought about a woman she'd never met writing a foreign name in careful Roman letters, so a child she'd never hold would never have to beg. I have the lab result, Nell said. I have the book. I have the boy. Then here is what I need, and I need you to hear the size of it. Evelyn's chair creaked. The trust is armor, but armor with a hole in it is just a shape. Without that page, I can't name a controller, I can't release a cent, and the moment the family learns there's an heir, the smart move for whoever's been sitting on this is to make the heir go away, one way or another, before I can arm it. A hard pause. The missing page isn't a technicality, it's the whole war. Find it, and I can lock this so tight the serpent's own board couldn't pry the boy loose. Don't find it, and you've handed a very dangerous man a very good reason to notice your son exists. Nell's throat was dry. Where does a page like that go? She said. If someone pulls it but doesn't burn it, if they were smart, they burned it. And if they weren't smart, if they were the kind of man who keeps things, who likes to have the thing over you, Nell was thinking of a study lock changed off the ledger, of drawers that stuck, of a house she knew the way she knew her own hands. Who'd want to be able to prove, someday, to somebody, that he was the one holding the leash? Evelyn was quiet a moment. Then it's in that house, she said. Somewhere in that house, with the rest of what he keeps, and you're the only person who's ever going to be allowed near it, who'd know what she was looking at. Nell looked at the wall between the cottage and the great dark mansion, all its wings and its stopped clock, and its locked drawers she had dusted around for 8 years, without once being permitted to open. Send me everything you have, she said. The draft, the renumbered copy, what the missing page should say. I'll courier it plain, no firm name on the envelope. A pause, and then, softer, almost against her own training, 20 years I kept that woman's secret, with nothing to keep it. 4. You understand what you're telling me. There's someone to keep it for now. There's someone to keep it for now, Nell said. Then don't waste it. Evelyn's voice sharpened back into the lawyer. Tell no one what you told me, not the staff, not the father, not more than he needs. The second the wrong person learns that boy's blood matches, The clock you're on stops being about a house sale. I know how to keep a room quiet, Nell said. I've kept one quiet for 5 years. I believe you, Evelyn said, and hung up first, the way careful people do. She ended the call. She sat in the lamp's small circle with 2 lines of ink on her skin, a clinic code and a lawyer's number, the whole shape of it standing up in the dark at last. A dead mother's armor, a son it was built for, and one torn page somewhere behind a locked door in a house she cleaned, standing between the two. She did not go up to the study to tell Jae-kyung. Not yet. She would tell him what he needed and hold back what she didn't trust him with, the way she'd said she would. She turned the green book over in her hands one more time. 405, 190, 1988. Sun Hee had hidden a whole future in a book about braised ribs and trusted that a woman would be the one to find it. A woman had. Nell tucked the book under the floorboard beside the coffee tin, laid the loose board flat, and pressed it down with her heel until it didn't creak. Then she stood over her sleeping son in the dark, his thumb loose on the mast even in sleep. And she started, without meaning to count the rooms in that house she had never been allowed to open. The envelope came Monday, tucked under a crate of lemons the grocer left at the service door, exactly where Evelyn said it would be. No firm name, no return address. Nell carried it into the pantry, shut the door with her hip, and slid it open with the paring knife she used for orange peel. 3 things slid out: a copy of the will, pages renumbered clean, a single sheet of what the missing page should say, typed in Evelyn's careful hand, and a memory card the size of a thumbnail, taped to an index card with 1 word on it: watch. She did not have time to watch it there. Micah was at school for 6 more hours. The house was quiet in that mid-morning way, all the staff scattered to their corners. She slid the card into the phone she kept for nobody, the cheap one, and pressed her back against the flower bin. The video was security footage, grainy, time-stamped 5 years and 2 months back. A camera she recognized from the 2nd-floor landing, the one that pointed at the study door. Seong-ho walked into frame. Nell's thumb went still on the screen. He carried a slim laptop under one arm and a phone in his hand. Not his own phone, 2 phones. He set them on the hall table under the camera, side by side, and he stood there working them both, 1 thumb on each, the way a man deals 2 hands of cards. 20 minutes, the timestamp crawled. 11:38, 11:40, 11:52. She knew those numbers. She had carried those numbers across an ocean. He was not intercepting the messages. He was writing them, both of them, on both phones. In the same hallway, at the same hour, 5 years and 2 months ago, while she sat on a bathroom floor across the city, waiting for a call that a man 40 feet from this pantry had already decided she would never get. Nell watched it twice. Then she pressed her palm flat to her own sternum, hard, the way you press on a cut. There was more on the card, a 2nd clip. This one had sound. Miriam Cole, younger by 5 years, her low bun still more black than gray, standing in a room Nell recognized as Seong-ho's private office off the east stair. She was not sitting. Song-ho was sitting. That told Nell everything about the room before a word was said. "I won't put my hand to it," Miriam said. Her voice came thin through the cheap speaker. "You want a thing forged, you find your own liar." Song-ho slid a folder across the desk. He did not raise his voice. He never raised his voice. "Your sister's boy," he said. 3 years now at the facility in Incheon. Good care, expensive care. Silence on the card. Long silence. "He stays cared for," Seong-ho said, "as long as I have reasons to be generous." "You give me the girl's hand, the way she loops her letters, the way she signs. You've read her notes for 8 years. Nell's jaw set so hard her ears rang. On the card, Miriam's shoulders dropped. Just a fraction, the exact fraction of a woman deciding to survive. "One sample," she said, the way she writes her M's. "That's all you get from me." "That's all I need," Sung-ho said. The clip ended. Nell stood in the pantry for a full minute with the phone dark in her hand. The flour bin bit into her back. Down the hall, a kettle was starting to sing, and nobody was moving to get it, and she thought, with a flat, cold clarity, that the woman who taught her which drawers stuck, who hired her pregnant and hungry, who fed Micah cocoa 1,000 mornings, had handed the shape of her handwriting to the man who took the boy's father away. She did not cry. She turned off the kettle. She wrapped the memory card in a square of wax paper and slid it into her apron, into the pocket that buttoned. Miriam found her 20 minutes later, in the linen room, folding pillowcases that were already folded. "You look like a wall fell on you," Miriam said from the doorway, her keys chiming at her waist. "Sit down before you drop." Nell kept folding. "How's your nephew, Miriam?" The keys stopped chiming. Nell turned. She watched the older woman's face do the whole arithmetic in about 2 seconds, watched the color go out from under the brown of it, watched a hand come up to the doorframe and hold. "He's alive," Miriam said finally. Not a question about how Nell knew, just the fact, laid down like a coin. "In Incheon, he's alive because I did a thing I'll answer to God for." "You wrote my hand," Nell said. "I wrote 3 words of your hand." Miriam's voice cracked on the 3, the M, and the way you drag your tails. "I told myself it wasn't the whole letter. I told myself somebody else pulled the trigger." She pressed the back of her wrist to her mouth. "It was still my finger on it. You watched me leave this country pregnant. I watched you come back." Miriam's eyes were wet now and furious. At herself, at the room. "I hired you back under a name that wasn't yours, and I never said one word to him or to anybody, because it was the only thing left I could do that looked like penance. I put that boy's cocoa in front of him every morning, knowing whose blood he carried, and knowing I helped cut him off from half of it." Nell set down the pillowcase. "I need you to say it to a lawyer," she said, "on a recording, with a date on it." Miriam did not flinch. That was the thing that told Nell she'd hold. She nodded once, slow, the way a woman nods when the weight she's carried for 5 years finally has somewhere to go. "When?" Miriam said. "Soon. Not today." Nell's mind was already 3 rooms ahead. Say nothing, change nothing, pour the cocoa. If Seong-ho smells one thing off, that boy in Incheon pays for it, and so does mine. Miriam's mouth worked. Does he know? The father. Does he know what his uncle did? He knows someone did it. Nell picked the keys of her own composure back up, one by one. He doesn't know it's the whole thing yet. I decide when he knows. Not you. She left Miriam standing in the linen room with both hands on the doorframe. She meant to tell Jae-kyung that night. She had it planned, the way she planned everything, in the small dark of the cottage after Micah slept. She would bring him the card. She would let him watch his uncle deal 2 hands of cards in the hallway. She would watch his face, and finally, decide whether the man was someone she could stand beside when the roof came down. That was the plan at 4 o'clock. At 5, the second envelope came. Not from Evelyn. This one came through the house mail, the ordinary tray Miriam sorted every afternoon and left on the hall console for the staff to claim. A cream envelope, heavy stock, and Nell only picked it up because the corner of it carried a stamp she knew from dusting, the seal of a family court clerk, an hour east. The same city as Evelyn, the same courthouse. It was not addressed to her, it was addressed to the house, to the estate. A courtesy copy, the kind sent to a party's last known residence. She should not have opened it. She opened it. A petition. Filed, stamped, 9 days ago. In the matter of the minor child, Micah. Petitioner, Han Jae-kyung. Requesting the establishment of paternity and an order of joint legal and physical custody, 9 days ago. Nell read the date 3 times. 9 days ago was 2 days before the DNA swab. 2 days before he sat in that gray coat and let a technician touch a cotton swab to the inside of his cheek and looked at her across the room and agreed to every single term she set. Results come to me first. I decide if and when you hear them. And he had said yes, slow, easy, agreeing to a thing that was already filed. He had walked into her clinic, having already walked into a courthouse. He filed before he knew. He filed before the lab. He filed on nothing but the arithmetic he did in a chair while a 5-year-old counted to 60. The paper shook. She made it stop. The hall was empty. The stopped clock down the private wing read 10 past 4, the way it always did, the way it had read the day he came home. Somewhere above her, a floorboard took a step, and she knew his weight now. She'd learned it in 3 weeks, and she folded the petition into quarters and put it in the apron pocket that did not button, the one over her heart, because her hands did not trust themselves to do anything smaller. She found him in the study. He was at the desk with both proof phones and the copy of the will she'd let him have, and he looked up when she came in with something on his face that on any other night she'd have called relief. "You have the packet," he said. "Evelyn's packet. I can see it on you. When were you going to tell me?" He stopped. His thumb, resting on the desk edge, went still. The same still she'd seen on a 5-year-old at a mast. "Tell you what." She set the petition on the desk. She smoothed it flat with 2 fingers, the folds standing up, and she turned it so the stamp faced him. She watched him read his own name. He did not reach for it. That was almost worse. He looked at it, and he did not pretend not to know what it was. "Eleanor, 9 days ago." Her voice came out level, and that frightened her more than shouting would have. "2 days before the swab, you sat in my clinic and you agreed the results came to me first. You let me believe I held the whole thing in my 2 hands. She pressed her palm flat on the paper. "You'd already handed a piece of him to a judge. It's a protective filing." He stood, slow, hands open, the way you stand up in front of a frightened animal. "Listen to me. The second Seong-ho knows there's an heir. The boy is a target. A filed paternity claim is a wall. It's a record with a date on it that says this child exists, and he's mine, and the law is already watching him. I did it before the result, so that if anything happened to that lab, to you, to me, there was still a piece of paper in a courthouse that couldn't be pulled the way that page was pulled. You did it without me." The room went quiet enough to hear the stopped clock not tick. "You did the one thing," Nell said. "The exact one thing I told you, in this room, on the first day, that you did not get to do. You made a move on my son, without my hand on it. You call it a wall. I know what a wall around Micah looks like. I've been building it for 5 years with my own 2 hands, and there is no page of it, not one, that I signed without reading first. I was trying to protect him. So was Miriam." The name landed on the desk between them like a dropped plate. She saw him not understand it yet. So was everybody who ever decided what was best for this boy in a room he wasn't in. That is not the same. It is exactly the same shape. She stepped back from the desk. 1 step. It felt like a mile. You want joint physical custody. You filed for it before a lab told you you had the right to want anything. You filed for half of him, Jae-kyung, half of my son, on the strength of a hunch and a hallway you're going to burn your uncle down for using the exact same way. That reached him. She watched it reach him. His hand came off the desk and pressed flat to his own chest, over the collar where the serpent disappeared, and for a second the boss went out of his face, and left something young and stricken there. I have never had a family that wasn't a transaction, he said, low. I don't know how to hold a thing without putting my name on it first. That's the truth of me. I saw him count to 60 and he stopped. His jaw worked. I didn't know how to want him without owning the want, so I filed, because filing is the only kind of love I was ever taught how to do. It was the truest thing he'd said in 3 weeks, and it did not fix one thing. I believe you, Nell said, and she did. That was the wound of it, and I still can't stand next to a man who moves on my child in the dark. Not tonight. Maybe not for a while. She took the wax paper square out of the buttoned pocket, the memory card. She'd meant to give it to him tonight, meant to let him watch his uncle deal the 2 hands, meant to hand him the whole shape of the thing and hold his hand while it broke him. She looked at the card. She looked at him. She put it back in her pocket. His eyes followed her hand. He knew she had something. He knew she was choosing not to give it. You found something, he said. I found everything. She let that sit. And you'll get it. When I decide, on my terms, the way I told you it would be from the first hour, before you went and proved to me exactly why my terms exist. Eleanor, I'm taking Micah tonight. The 4 words did what the whole conversation hadn't. He came around the desk fast and stopped himself, both hands up, holding the air. Taking him where? An hour east. She was already at the door, somewhere with a lock you don't have a key to, and a name on the lease that isn't on any deed you own. Somewhere I can put the whole thing in front of a lawyer without a Han in the room deciding what's best while I'm not looking. That's Seong-ho's territory. An hour east, that's Evelyn's building. Her hand was on the latch. And Evelyn works for the boy, not for the family. Not for you. She looked back at him one time. You want to know the difference between you and me, tonight? I'd have shown you that card in 10 minutes if I'd found this an hour later. I trusted you enough to break in front of you. You couldn't trust me enough to file a piece of paper with my name beside yours. Don't take him tonight. His voice was not a boss's voice. Take the morning, take a week. Don't put him in a car in the dark and drive into my uncle's half of the map because you're angry at me. I'm not angry, she opened the door. I'm his mother. That was always the only wall that held. She went down the private stair with her spine straight and her hands steady, and she did not let one thing show until she was through the kitchen, past Miriam, who read her face and asked nothing, and started, without being told, to pack a bag of cocoa and bread into a paper sack for the road. At the cottage, she woke Micah gentle, the way you wake a child you don't want to frighten. His thumb found the mast of the ship on the pillow before his eyes opened. Are we leaving? He said, thick with sleep. We're good at leaving. The old words, the words she'd taught him, they landed in her like a hook. We're going on a trip, she said. Just us. There's a lady with a green couch, and I hear she's got a fridge full of the orange kind of ice cream. The good kind. He sat up. He looked at her the way he looked at everything, straight and low-browed and certain. Is the boatman coming? She got the coffee tin from under the floorboard. She got the green cookbook wrapped in its towel. She got the memory card, the will copy, Evelyn's packet, the folded petition. She loaded her son's whole future into a canvas bag and zipped it and put the strap across her body like a seatbelt. Not this time, baby, she said. She carried him out to the car with his head on her shoulder and the wooden ship in his fist, and behind them the great house stood lit in the private wing, one window, one man at a desk with 2 phones of proof and a stamped petition, and no idea in the world how to hold a thing without owning it. Nell pulled out past the gate, turned east, and drove into the dark half of the map with everything that could save her boy in a bag against her ribs, and the one man who could help her getting smaller in the mirror behind. She did not look at him go. She had learned, a long time ago, that you do not watch the thing you're leaving. You watch the road, and you count. She started counting the miles to Evelyn's door. Evelyn Price kept a lamp on for them, and by its light she watched Nell empty the whole canvas bag onto the kitchen table, like a woman turning out her pockets before a judge. Micah slept on the couch under Evelyn's coat, the wooden ship rising and falling on his chest, the coffee tin, the green cookbook in its towel, the will copy, the memory card, the folded petition with its clerk's stamp. Nell lined them up, one by one, the way she lined up silver before noon. Evelyn touched the petition last. He filed 9 days ago, 2 days before the swab. Then he filed on a hunch. Evelyn slid it back. Men like that don't gamble. He was sure before he was allowed to be sure. Nell's hand went to her throat, to the locket. Old habit, 5 years deep, the way another woman touches a scar to check it's still there. Evelyn's eyes followed the hand. That's the one from the video. Miriam kept looking at it. It's Micah, 3 days old. Nell opened it, held it out, the thumbnail photo, the tiny curled fist. Evelyn did not take it. She tilted her head. Sunhee left you a book of coded dates and a lawyer's name underlined twice. A careful woman, and she let you wear the one thing on your body she was sure you'd never take off. She paused. Housekeeper, you know locket cases. Is that one flush? Nell went still. She had cleaned 4 lockets in that house. She knew the weight of an empty case and the weight of a full one. She had worn this one against her sternum for 5 years and never once weighed it as inventory, never turned the professional eye on the thing that held her son. She pried her thumbnail under the photo's edge. It did not lift like a photo pressed into felt. It lifted like a lid. Behind it, seated in a shallow well cut too clean to be original, lay a key no longer than a fingernail, flat brass, 3 teeth, a number filed into the bow. Nell held it up to the lamp. Micah shifted on the couch. The ship slid, and his thumb found the mast in his sleep and steadied it. She didn't give me a photo, Nell said. She gave me a place to hide a key and let me think it was sentiment. Evelyn read the filed number without touching it. That's a cabinet stamp. Furniture, not a bank. Something in the house. The archive. Nell's voice came out flat and certain. East wing. Past the study. A run of oak drawers Miriam called the paper morgue. Nobody's opened the 3rd bank in years. The pulls stiff. She closed the locket over the empty well. I dusted the front of it every Tuesday for 8 years and never had the key. Evelyn stood. Then you drove the wrong direction tonight. No. Nell put the key in her palm and closed her fingers. I drove Micah out of the house first. Now I go back in without him. Evelyn started to argue the danger. An hour east, near Seong-ho's ground, a woman alone walking back into the one building where the man who pulled a will page could reach her. Nell was already folding the towel back over the cookbook. You keep him, Nell said. You keep all of it but the key. If I don't call you by morning, you file everything and you make noise so loud he can't do it quiet. Evelyn held her look a long second. Then she nodded, the way allies nod, which is to say she hated it and did it anyway. One thing, Evelyn crossed to the couch and drew her coat higher over the sleeping boy. When you open that drawer, you'll want to run. You'll find your 5 years sitting in a file, itemized, and something in you will want to burn the house down around it. Don't. She turned back. Bring me paper. Paper is how we win. Fire is how he wins. Nell looked at her son a last time, the rise and fall. The little fist that had grown into a hand that tapped a mast twice. I stopped wanting to burn things a long time ago, she said. I want to inventory them. Nell drove back west into the dark half of the map with one hand on the wheel and the other closed around a key the size of a tooth. Twice on the black road, a pair of headlights sat in her mirror too long and both times she took an exit she didn't need and watched them slide past, and both times her pulse counted itself back down. Sang-ho's ground. She'd handed Evelyn the danger like a coat she was taking off. She kept the key. She came in the service door at 4 in the morning, past the boot room, up the back stairs the staff used, past the stopped clock that still read 10 past 4. The private wing held that furred silence a house keeps at that hour. She did not turn on lights. She had walked these halls in the dark for 8 years, carrying trays and sleeping children. She could find the archive by the feel of the floorboards. The third bank of drawers sat where it had always sat. She fit the brass key. The lock had been oiled, recently, by someone who visited it, and it turned without a sound. Inside, a box file, cloth-bound, the same soft green as the cookbook. Nell carried it to the window and read by the gray coming up over the grounds. The top page was the one Evelyn had described down to the renumbering. The signed execution page of Han Sun-hee's will, the real one, with the successor controller clause intact, and the notary's seal pressed into the corner. The page that had been lifted out of the filed copy and kept, not burned, by a man who liked to have things over people. Under it, a stack she had not been promised, printed logs of intercepted messages, 5 years and 2 months old, 2 phone numbers she knew by heart now, the 1140 and the 1152, sitting in a carrier's own record, like 2 nails in a board. Receipts from a private security firm, itemized, 1-line reading device cloning, and 1-line reading message origination, signed for on a company card, and a flat black recorder, the kind that clips to a lapel, with a strip of tape across it in Sun-hee's hand. Listen when he thinks he's won. Nell pressed the button. Sun-hee's voice, thinned by illness but level, filled the cold room. Nell had never heard it. She had polished the woman's brooch and dusted her photograph and cooked from her book, and she had never once heard the voice, and it undid something in her chest that she did not have time for. The confession was short, and it was surgical. Sun-hee named her brother-in-law. She said Sang-ho held the golden serpent only as long as her son had no heir, that the charter passed the house to a grandchild the day one drew breath, and passed it to Sang-ho only in the absence of one. She said she had watched him move against a girl she'd chosen to bless, a girl carrying the child that would end his claim, and that she had built the trust and hidden the page because she was dying and could not protect either of them with her own hands. Then the voice paused and gathered and turned personal in a way the rest had not been. She said she was sorry. She said she had known the girl's name before her son did, had picked her, in the private accounting a mother keeps, and had run out of body before she ran out of plans. She said she was leaving the finishing of it to whoever was patient enough to clean a house down to its hidden drawers. She said she trusted that woman more than she trusted the men who would inherit her blood. She said, last, in English, the only English on the tape, for the boy, when there is one. So he does not have to ask any of them for anything. Nell sat with that in the gray light. A dying woman had bet the whole ending on a housekeeper she'd never spoken to plainly, and the bet had come home. It was not a comfort, it was a weight, handed forward, and Nell had carried heavier. The same line as the cookbook, the line Nell had completed to a lawyer over a burner phone. Sun-hee had written it twice, 5 years apart, into 2 objects, and trusted the house to deliver them to the one woman who cleaned every surface in it. Nell turned the security receipts over, and there, on the back of the origination invoice, a detail that meant nothing to a lawyer and everything to a housekeeper. The messages hadn't been thumbed out on a phone. They'd been composed on a machine and pushed to the numbers, a digital typewriter, the firm called it, model and serial printed plain. Nell knew that serial. She'd inventoried it. A slim console unit that lived in Sang-ho's own office off the East Gallery, the one he called his correspondence desk, the one no maid was allowed to touch because he sealed his letters himself with a brass hand seal she'd catalogued at 41 grams and a snake for a handle. The typewriter that wrote the words. The seal that closed the lie. Both of them sitting in his room with his fingerprints worn into them, both of them on a firm's own paper in her hands. She did not move for a moment. Not fear, arithmetic. She was counting rooms again, but this time, she was counting the ones she was finally allowed to open. Then she put everything back in the green box, tucked it under her arm, and walked down the front stairs of a house she had only ever climbed by the back. She called Evelyn from the study. She called Jae-kyung from the study. She said 8 words to each of them and hung up on both. The board of the Golden Serpent met at 11 that same morning because Sung-ho, who did not know the ground had moved under him, had called the meeting himself weeks ago to approve the sale of the estate, the sale that had started the whole 30-day clock. Nell walked into the boardroom in her uniform, matte black dress, white square collar, the apron with the structured bow, the brass keys at her waist. She had considered, for about the length of one held breath at the cottage mirror, changing into something a boardroom would respect. Then she'd left the uniform on, let them see exactly who had been cleaning up under them. Micah was an hour east, asleep or eating cereal in a lawyer's kitchen, and that was the only fact in the room she cared about. He was nowhere near this. 12 men and one long table. Jae-kyung at the far end, the returning son, in the dark teal shirt and the charcoal waistcoat, the serpent at his collar, the gold ring on his hand. He had played the bored air for weeks exactly as she'd asked, and he played bored now, until she came through the door, and then something in his shoulders let go. Seong-ho sat at the table's center in charcoal gray, white shirt, black tie, the antique cufflinks. He looked at the housekeeper the way a man looks at a chair that has spoken. "This is a board matter," he said. "The staff can bring coffee and leave." "I brought papers." Nell set the green box on the table. She did not make a speech. She had watched this man take 5 years from her with a machine and a seal, and she was not going to hand him a monologue to interrupt. She laid the chain out the way she laid out silver, in order, each piece worth more than looking like it was worth. The signed will page, seal up, in front of the oldest board member. This is the execution page of Han Sun-hee's will. It was pulled from the filed copy. It names a successor controller. It was never destroyed. It was kept. She slid it down the table. The charter passes this house to a grandchild the day one exists. The intercepted logs, next. 2 numbers, 5 years ago, 1140 and 1152. The night a marriage that would have made that grandchild was ended by 2 messages neither person sent. The security receipts. A firm was paid to clone 2 phones and originate 2 messages. Here's the invoice. Here's the card it was signed on. She turned the origination page over and set her finger on the serial. The messages were composed on a console typewriter. Serial ends in the numbers I'm about to read. She read them. "That machine sits in your correspondence room, Mr. Han. I catalogued it 4 years ago. Beside a brass seal, 41 grams, snake handle. I catalogued that too. No maid is allowed to touch either, so they carry only one man's hands." Seong-ho's jaw worked. A domestic with a grievance and a box of forgeries. "I catalogue for a living." Nell did not raise her voice. She had learned, cleaning under men who talked over her, that the quietest thing in a loud room is the thing everyone leans in to hear. "I know the weight of every object in this house to the gram. I know which drawer sticks and which lock was changed off the ledger. I know the machine because I dusted around it for 4 years while you sealed your letters and told me not to touch. You built your whole trick out of things I was paid to keep track of. That was your mistake. You hid the truth in a house and left the housekeeper in it." A board member reached for the security receipts and began to read them for himself. That was the sound of the room turning, paper moving toward the men who counted, away from the man who'd sat at the center of it. Nell pressed the recorder button. Sun Hee's voice came into the boardroom where every man in it had known her, and the room changed temperature. She named him. She named the charter. She named the girl and the child and the page. She said the English line. When the tape clicked off, no one reached for coffee. "There is a living heir," Nell said. "The lab result is with a family court clerk an hour east, filed under a paternity petition that has been on record for 9 days. Han Jae-kyung has a son, which means, by this charter and this page," she touched the will, "your control of this house ended the day that boy drew breath. 5 years ago, you've been holding a chair that stopped being yours before you sat all the way down." The oldest board member picked up the will page and held it to the light for the seal, the way Nell had held the key to the lamp at 4 that morning. He set it down and looked at Sung-ho, and that look was the vote before the vote. Then Jae-kyung stood. He did not claim the house. That was the thing Nell had not been sure he'd understand, and he understood it. He put both hands flat on the table and he said, "To the board, I claim my son." A pause, the thumb tapping twice against the wood before the rest. "And I am placing every share that comes to him into an independent fund he cannot be leaned on to release, controlled by counsel of the mother's choosing, not mine, not this table's. He will never have to ask any of you for anything." The line landed in the room like a stone in a well, because half the men at the table had heard Sun Hee say it 3 minutes before on tape, and now heard the son say it in his own mouth, and understood the dead woman had written the ending years ago and only just now been read aloud. Song-ho fell the way accounts fall, by documents and by a show of hands. The vote to remove him for cause carried before he finished gathering his cufflinks. Evelyn Price arrived at past with the certified filings and a court order arming the trust off the recovered page, and with a second document that freed the nephew in Incheon from being a hostage to anyone's generosity, because leverage only works while it's secret, and this one was now on the record in a board's own minutes. Miriam's recording would be made that afternoon, dated, to a lawyer, exactly as Nell had ordered, not as a maid protecting herself, but as a witness who no longer had a child held over her. The estate sale died with the man who'd called it. The house did not become Jae-kyung's, and it did not become Nell's, and that was the point. It became the Sun Hee Foundation, endowed from the recovered trust, chartered to do the one thing its founder had wanted, so that a child would never have to beg the people who should have loved him first. Evelyn drafted it. The board, thinned by one, approved it, because there was nothing left in the room brave enough to vote against a dead woman's voice. They asked who would direct it. Nell was still in her apron. She'd run this house for 8 years without a key to its most important drawer, and she'd found the drawer anyway. Jae-kyung looked at her across the length of the table and said the name, and no one argued, because the woman who'd carried the chain into the room already knew where every paper in the building was kept. It was evening before the two of them stood in the study alone, the stopped clock finally taken down off the wall and lying face up on the desk between them, like a thing that could be wound again or not. The keys still hung at her waist. She had not taken the apron off all day, and no one had dared ask her to, and somewhere in the last hour, the uniform had stopped meaning the woman who cleaned up after them and started meaning the only person in the building who'd known where everything was. "Micah's asking for you," she said. "He's asking for the boatman, actually. Same thing now." Jae-kyung turned the clock over in his hands. "You're going to tell him. We're going to tell him." Slow. She let the words sit. You filed on my son in the dark. You don't get to undo that by winning today. I know. He set the clock down. I only ever learned how to hold a thing by owning it, putting my name on it. He looked up. I'm trying to learn the other way. Were you ever the bad man? She asked. Not cruel. The question she'd never once let herself ask him straight. He considered it honestly, the way Micah considered things, brows low, thumbs still. Sometimes I was. Nell nodded. She had spent 5 years teaching a child that the truth was the least a person owed you. Are you trying to get better? Every day, he said. She picked up the fallen clock and put it back on its hook, and reached up and moved the hands off 4:10 for the first time in 5 years, and set them running. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Tell me, K-Fam, have you ever been thrown away by someone, only to learn years later that a stranger forged the words that ended it? Have you ever raised a child alone, holding a truth that could rewrite both your lives, waiting for the day someone would finally believe you? And when the truth came out, did you fight for it out loud, the way Nell did in that boardroom? Mark my words, K-Fam, silence protects the wrong people. Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about truth, motherhood, and love, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.